This episode, I am talking Marvel. Now, I will be the first to admit I am not a big time superhero guy or person. I enjoy the movies. I've seen the Avenger movies, Black Panther, Thor Ragnarok, or however you say it. My name is Korg. I'm kind of like the leader of the group. Whichever one that featured that guy. Korg, I think his name was, yeah. They're all kind of the same. You know, that's one of the things. I mean, that was what made this. That's what made Ragnarok or whatever it's called, kind of interesting. Is it was a little bit of a. It was a little bit funnier. It was a little bit funnier. It wasn't. It wasn't quite the same formula as most of the superhero movies, where it's basically just like, you know, protagonist gets strong, protagonist faces antagonist defeats protagonist, or has the protagonist up against the wall, you know, our hero comes back and just wins it. You know, it's kind of the formula. Anyway, recently I've thought about Marvel and superheroes, and I went down the proverbial rabbit hole, you see. I saw an article that ranked the strongest Marvel superheroes from 20 to number 1. Maybe you're thinking I'm going to give you that list. Well, you're wrong, because I don't remember it very well, nor do I really remember where I read it. However, I did compile a list of superheroes that I know virtually nothing about prior to recording this episode, or very little about. Yeah, basically nothing or very little. And I thought I'd share some interesting characters. They're not necessarily superheroes. They're actually probably not heroes at all. They're just weird characters that I looked into. You know, they're weird. Yeah, they're weird, or there's something interesting about them. I figured I'd share them with you. First character. A character I do know is Ego, the Living Planet. Okay. I saw Guardians of the Galaxy, both or all three of them, however many there are, and I do remember this character. Now, Ego, the Living Planet, is a conscious planet, and I will say I think it's a wildly creative and awesome idea for a character, right? Every part of its substance, its atmosphere, it's controlled by the consciousness, you know, the atmosphere, the terrain, all that, it's controlled by the consciousness of Ego. Ego can transform into powerful beings. It can shape the terrain, like I said, based on circumstance. Think about what a cool idea for a character. It's not a gal with super strength. It's not a guy that can teleport. It's an entire planet that has its own consciousness. I think I like the character of Ego even more, or I wanted to talk about it more in particular, because Kurt Russell is the one who portrayed Ego in Guardians of the Galaxy. Kurt Russell, of course, got his career off in a very humble fashion. He played Boy Kicking Mike in the 1963 film It Happened at the World's Fair. This is straight from his Wikipedia page, which is probably straight from his IMDb. Very modest beginnings. I wonder if in 1963, when they gave him the role of Boy Kicking Mike, if Kurt Russell thought he was going to go on to do great things in his career. Maybe he comes from like Hollywood royalty. I'm not sure about that, right? Because isn't Kurt Russell the one who's also married to, or was married to Goldie Hawn, or whatever her name was, and their daughter is Kate Hudson, I think. So maybe Russell comes from a similar prestigious line of royalty like that. Okay, in all seriousness, I do like Kurt Russell. I like quite a few of his films. For me, he's been a few movies that for me have been very memorable films. Mostly the Thing. That's, you know, kind of my favorite. If you haven't seen The Thing and you enjoy thrillers and or horror movies, then you should really see the 82 original. I think they've made a remake or two since then, but that 1982 movie is absolute perfection as far as I'm concerned. And what I really enjoyed about that movie, what I can really appreciate about it, is they use a lot of prosthetics, a lot of practical effects for some of the gore, some of the crazy things that happen. And it's interesting to think of a movie made in 1982 that in many ways looks more real than plenty of sci-fi films filmed now. And I think for films, that's usually the right way to go. I think as humans, we're able to quickly perceive what is real and what is fake. And I just think when films, I think when they do it for small details, it looks really great. But when sort of the main focus on the screen or during a scene is going to be something that's inserted, CGI, I think we can tell. But The Thing, as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I can remember, in part looks gory and scary and gross because they use practical effects. So I remember I wasn't around in 1982, but I remember watching that movie on it came up like on DirecTV or something like that, whatever cable provider we had as kids, and I remember watching it. And it's a really good movie. I also really enjoyed Miracle, right? Hacky movie, and The Hateful Eight. But I think in many ways it's because I enjoy Tarantino's style of film, which is why I liked Hateful Eight, and maybe why I like Russell even more. I think he just looks like a cool guy. This coming from someone who really doesn't know much about his personal life. Okay, the next character that I think was strange or worth chatting about for a little bit is MODOK, M-O-D-O-K. Just look up this character and you'll be wondering what is up with this thing. MODOK is originally George Tarleton, who was a technician for the organization Advanced Idea Mechanics, AIM, A-I-M. He created the Cosmic Cube, and the AIM scientists use advanced mutagenics to alter Tarleton and create the super-intelligent MODOK. It's just a weird background story, weird-looking character. MODOK goes on to become ambitious, kills his former masters, and takes control of AIM. He is a common antagonist to Captain America, battling the hero on 4+ occasions. Just Google that. I think MODOK, I don't know how prevalent he is. Again, I'm not a comic book guy, and I'm not a Marvel guy per se. I do, as I've said, I enjoy the films, but I don't really follow a lot of the lore or a lot of the storyline. Look him up. He's a weird-looking little character. All right, another character that caught my attention: Howard the Duck, a.k.a. Master of Quack Fu, a.k.a. Feathered Fury. Not making this up, people. Howard the Duck was introduced in 1973's Adventure into Fear, number 19. Howard the Duck did not have any superpowers. The only thing that made him extraordinary was the fact that he was a talking duck. So he's basically Donald Duck. Okay, that's what Marvel did. He's basically just Donald Duck. And the funny thing is, if you look at the comic book or the comic cover, it just looks like Donald Duck, and he's like wrapped up in chains, like in an insane asylum. So I'm wondering if whoever came up with Howard the Duck said, we want to just essentially plagiarize Donald Duck and see what happens. unless Donald Duck came after, but I don't think that's the case. I mean, on top of that, I mean, they could have made Howard the Duck. I mean, given maybe a different aesthetic. Why not Howard the Goose? You know what I mean? Just something a little different, especially if he has no superheroes or superpowers. It comes off as kind of lazy. But yeah. Adventure into Fear. That's the other thing, is how are you going to have a character named Howard the Duck on the cover and, probably the hero in a comic series titled Adventure into Fear? Next character that I found, Hell Cow, also known as Bessie. This is one of the few Marvel characters introduced with Swiss origins, being presented as a cow hailing from Switzerland. Hell Cow first appeared in 1975. So what's the deal with Hell Cow? He or she, it, whatever Hell Cow prefers, is basically a cow mixed with a vampire. I'm not making this up. The main motivation for Bessie was, get this, to seek Dracula and get revenge. Now, from my very limited research, I didn't see what Bessie is seeking revenge for. Presumably, maybe Dracula was the one that created Hell Cow by infecting the cow, and that might be that may be the case. But this was the main motivation for Hell Cow, is find Dracula, extract revenge. This was Hell Cow's obsession. Here's a kicker, and this one had me LOLing out loud. IRL. Remember when that used to be so popular that like LOL is still used, but I remember like when texting was kind of new, like as young people, we kind of, my experience, I'm curious what yours was, we kind of like took pride in misspelling things. Everything needed to be abbreviated, or what had to be like WUT. I think maybe part of the motivation was cell phone carriers would charge you per text in some cases, or you had a limit to the number of texts that you could send. So in order just to reduce the space and the characters that you were using. But I remember, oddly enough, I found my, not my original cell phone, that phone, who knows where that is, but I found, a phone I used to use basically when I was like in, I don't know, like middle school, high school. And I was able to turn it on, and I saw a couple of messages. Obviously I didn't have a SIM card at that point, but I had a couple of messages that were there from before. Some of the messages I sent, what are you doing? WUT, the letter R, letter U, DOIN. And now I just don't find that to be the way people communicate through text. Like when someone's on the WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger or whatever it may be. No, you really don't see people typing WUT. I mean, it's all so proper. But back in the day, that used to be the way to communicate. It was, you could identify someone as being an old person. At least the circle that I ran in, it was like, why are you typing so formally? Not that I was anti-establishment ever in my life, but I just thought it was like, you're such an adult. Why are you writing this out? Full words? Why? This is technology. Anyway, so Hell Cow's obsession was getting it at Dracula. So here was the kicker that I was talking about that had me LOLing. Hell Cow was doomed and given an early death by Marvel. Here's how Hell Cow died. A wooden stake was put through its heart by Howard the Duck, Master of Quack Fu took a wooden stake, drove it directly into poor Bessie's heart. Just weird. It's just weird. I mean, it's like, it makes you wonder, like, what were these people thinking about? It's ridiculous. It's craziness. All right, the last character I wanted to bring to your attention, Dr. Bong, aka Lester Verde. They probably say Verdi, but it's green in Spanish, so I'm saying Verde. Verdi. Yeah. Okay, so if you look up Dr. Bong, it's an interesting image, you'll find. A very, very interesting looking character, that's for sure. Dr. Bong was featured in the same comic as Howard the Duck and Hal Cow. So Marvel was really thinking a little crazy when they were coming up with this comic. Dr. Bong has... he's not actually a doctor. He just has good knowledge of genetics and has transformed, and he can transform animals into sentient humanoid beings to serve his evil will. He can also apparently strike things with his bell-shaped head and or ball-shaped hand and produce sonic vibrations that can do a lot of things, including creating a sonic barrier for protection and transporting him by triggering a teleportation device. You know, when I read things like this, it just makes me think you can genuinely come up with comic characters, heroes, antagonists, places, pretty much by just wishing it into existence. How do you have a character named Lester who becomes Dr. Bong? He has a bell-shaped head and a ball-shaped hand. And they went through this. You know? Because the thing is, Dr. Bong, he got a little bit of runtime. He was featured in comics alongside She-Hulk, Deadpool, and even The Amazing Spider-Man as recently as 2008. So it's not as if Dr. Bong was like Howard the Duck. You know, Howard the Duck and Hal Cow, they had a very short lifespan. You know, they were alive in the 70s, basically. They had a very brief run. And they said, why did we plagiarize Donald Duck? Why do we have a cow that's a vampire? Why not just a regular vampire? You ever think that sometimes people come up with things that are a little bit too elaborate for their own good? Because wouldn't it have just been just as interesting to have, instead of Hal Cow, you have like Hellbat? He's just a vampire that kind of looks like a bat, right? Not that I'm telling Marvel what to do. They're obviously honest and good stuff. So yeah, as recently as 2008, you would be able to pick up a comic and see Dr. Bong. Dr. Bong. So Lester is the original form of Dr. Bong. He was a journalist or a journalism student whose hand was severed by a miniature guillotine when performing with the bank Mildred Horowitz. I didn't see why a miniature guillotine was featured. I didn't quite notice, or it was just apparently severed. Dr. Bong goes on to be pitted against She-Hulk, and it's a weird timeline for Dr. Bong, all in all. There was something about quintuplets, there was something about he was maybe attracted to She-Hulk. She-Hulk eventually defeats him. I'm not quite sure. It's a little bit of a weird story. So there you have it. We learned about Ego, Hal Cow, Howard the Duck, MODOK, Lester Verde, Dr. Bong. Weird stuff. Curious to know if you guys have any Marvel characters or maybe DC characters. Maybe I'll do that next, like strange DC characters. If you have any weird ones you want me to chat about or want to bring to my attention, you can always email the show at hello@sleepandrelaxasmr. can check out our website, sleepandrelaxasmr.com. Follow us on the popular ASMR app Tingles. That's all for this episode. Thanks for listening. Thanks. What's my going away? I've actually forgotten what my ending salutation is. It's thanks for listening and take care. Yeah, that's it. Can't believe I forgot that one. But yeah, I will end it right there. Thanks again. Till next time.